Bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
And welcome to On the Money, your daily weekday dose of economics, business and consumer news. Today, for the next hour, we're broadcasting from Burnley in Lancashire, a proud town, former weaving capital of the world that in recent years has reinvented itself as a regional hub for aerospace and light industry. The latest instalment in GB News North West Week. On the day that the government releases its Levelling Up white paper, Michael Gove, Secretary of State for Levelling Up, will be making a statement in the Commons. We'll bring you that live as soon as that happens. So stay with us for the next hour on the money after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
A very good afternoon to you. I'm Rosie Wright. It's just gone 1 o'clock. I'm here to keep you up to date on GB News. Now, Labour has accused Boris Johnson of introducing stealth taxes and gaslighting the British public. During Prime Minister's questions, Sir Keir Starmer compared the Prime Minister and the Chancellor Rishi Sunak to Thelma and Louise, saying they were driving the country off a financial cliff.
Lots of words, lots of bluster, no answers. Word of warning, Prime Minister. That's not going to work with the police. I'll tell him why they're putting taxes up. Low growth. In the decade of Tory government before the pandemic, growth slumped. It was much, much weaker than under the last Labour government.
I think everybody in this country can see that we've been through the biggest pandemic since for 100 years, that we've looked after the people of this country to the tune of £400 billion, that we've put into furlough and all the other schemes, 11.7 million people protected. Everybody knows the cost of that, Mr. Speaker. And at the same time, in spite of all the difficulties that we have faced, we have now got the fastest growth in the G7.
Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove says people in the North and Midlands have been overlooked and undervalued by politicians for years. The government's due to publish its election pledge plans to level up the country, aiming to reduce the gap between poor and rich areas. The policy includes 12 national missions, such as improving pay, investing in education and a devolution of powers from Westminster. Michael Gove told GB News the government is listening to voters.
In the 2016 Brexit referendum, one of the reasons why so many people voted Leave is they wanted to shake up SW1 and say, look, whatever you're obsessed about in your bubble, however successful you and your friends are, there are people out here in the country who have not shared in that success. And we want a government that is as focused on Wolverhampton as it is on Westminster. And we've got that message, and I think the whole political system is getting that message now as well.
The Shadow Levelling Up Minister, Alex Norris, has criticised the policy, accusing the government of using recycled pots of money.
The idea that there's an awful lot more money coming through the system, I don't think stands up to scrutiny. Again, we're seeing these same kind of broad promises with very little detail, and as I say, no new money sitting behind them. And I think we'll see exactly as much action as we've seen over the last 12 years, which is none whatsoever.
In other news now, Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood has been released on bail pending further investigation. The 20-year-old was first arrested on Sunday on suspicion of rape and assault of a young woman after social media images and videos were posted online. On Tuesday, he was further arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and threats to kill. Raith Rovers Football Club has been warned that its reputation is being tarnished by the signing of a player who was found to have raped a woman by a civil court. The club's main sponsor, the author Val McDermid, has withdrawn her support following David Goodwill's signing. In 2017, he was ordered to pay damages after a civil court ruled that he'd raped a woman, but he's never faced criminal charges. Raith Rovers says the decision to sign him is based purely on football. The Home Secretary says there's been a failure of leadership in some parts of the Metropolitan Police. Priti Patel was speaking after the Independent Office for Police Conduct found evidence of bullying, racism and misogyny in the force. She told the Home Affairs Committee there are problems within the culture of the Met.
We're not seeing one-off incidences. I think we should just be quite clear about that. We are not seeing one-off incidences. It's not isolated. We have seen now too many times, too many instances where in policing we just see the most appalling behaviours, the most appalling conduct. I also think it shows a failure of leadership in some quarters.
A charity and a union representing Border Force officers are seeking a High Court injunction to prevent migrant boats from being pushed back towards France. Lawyers for the Public and Commercial Services Union and Care for Calais will argue the Home Office should suspend the policy because it contravenes international law. The union says it's trying to protect Border Force members and avoid harming refugees who try to reach the UK. You're now up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's return to On the Money.
And welcome to On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I'm Liam Halligan. For the next hour, we're broadcasting from Burnley here in Lancashire as part of GB News' North West Week. We're delighted to be hosted today by the Rose Hill House Hotel here in Burnley. It's a former mill owner's house, a historic building lovingly restored to a 30-room hotel and events venue by a local family. We're joined by a panel of local business leaders giving us their views on levelling up. What do they think of the government's new white paper and Michael Gove's pledges to try and right the UK's regional imbalances? We're expecting the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove, to be giving a statement in the Commons in the next hour, and when that happens, we will bring you that live. What do you think? Is levelling up just a slogan, or is it a meaningful set of policy proposals? Email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet at GBnews. I'll be reading out some of your emails later in the show, so stay with us. I'm Liam Halligan. This is GB News from Burnley, and you're on the money. Earlier today, desperate to divert us from stories about Downing Street parties and birthday cake, the government issued its new, long-awaited Levelling Up white paper. There's no new money, the fine print shows, and opponents of the government claim that it's some pretty thin gruel. Now, the Conservatives won many seats across what was known as Labour's Red Wall here in the North and the Midlands. It's vital to Boris Johnson he retains those seats if he's going to win the election, if indeed he is, by then, Prime Minister. Will this Levelling Up white paper convince people here in Burnley, given that the 12-point plan across subjects such as housing, transport, infrastructure and education, many of those points won't be delivered, these policy proposals admit, until 2030. Now, yesterday, On the Money was broadcast as part of GB News North West Week from the relatively prosperous Cheshire town of Macclesfield. We're now in Lancashire here in Burnley, once the weaving capital of the world, a town that fell on hard times in the 70s and 80s and then reinvented itself successfully as a regional hub for aerospace and light industry. But Burnley was hit hard during lockdown. It was the most furloughed town in Britain, given that reliance on aerospace, a sector itself which suffered greatly during this pandemic. Burnley had 10% employment, but the local economy is recovering fast, and we're going to hear about that. So as ministers at Westminster wonder, as the political class is focused on Parliament, we're here in Burnley asking this on the money question today. This Levelling Up white paper, what does Burnley think? Now, regular viewers know, and listeners on GB News Radio, of course, that On the Money gives you every weekday grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff, and that's reflected as ever on my panel. We're joined by John Doherty, who is the owner, the creator, the co-manager with his daughter Emma of this wonderful facility, the Rose Hill House Hotel. And we're joined by Tully, the hotel's dog. There she is, a wonderful cockapoo. We're joined also by James Anderson, a well-known local plumber who, as well as running a business, also runs a very widely respected not-for-profit organisation helping people with their plumbing help who need it. And also we're joined by Carol Johnson. She runs the Smithson Farm Camping Centre just outside Burnley, and also a local mining museum. It's great to see all of you here. Thanks so much for joining us here on The Money. Now, John, we've actually met before. I visited you and Emma during lockdown as part of my research as a journalist and made a film from here. Back then, I must say, you felt, Emma felt, we all felt that the business was very much in the balance. Many of your weddings had been cancelled, of course. Many of your events had been cancelled. You still had to pay for the upkeep of what is a really magnificent building here in Burnley. You're feeling a bit more optimistic now?
Yeah, during the lockdown it gave us the opportunity to make a lot of improvements, do a lot of work, so we didn't stop spending money on the place. We were just looking at the end point to see how we could be better than we were, and the first signs are looking good. It was looking really good. We opened properly in August last year, and business was great until the further restrictions in December, which was...
That must have been a blow.
It was an all but name, a lockdown. Quite
not
frankly.
Language for daytime television.
No, it's not. It definitely is not.
But I remember you and I sat in this room with your daughter Emma, and we discussed the business in the real depths of lockdown, early 2021 I think it was, and you felt that when lockdown was lifted it would spring back, because there is quite a bit of wealth in this part of the country. There are people who want to get married, they want to hold receptions, they want to mark their birthdays, and people want to come and visit. We're in a beautiful part of the UK. You are now seeing that spring back though.
Yes, we have been. The first signs are really good. People weren't cancelling. We were deferring, but nobody cancelled, and which is good news. So we knew that when we started up, we'd be running, not crawling, and so that's the way it's turned out.
And great to see it. I'm so glad your business has survived, and thank you for welcoming us back here to this wonderful building. James, it's always good in my experience as an economics and business journalist to talk to local plumbers. They have a real good handle for how local people are feeling, the money they're spending or not spending, the state of the local housing market. How you moved here to Burnley from Liverpool quite a few years ago. You've seen Burnley through thick and thin, how it's reinvented itself. What's the business mood here in Burnley at the moment, and can this levelling up initiative help?
The business mood is everybody's survival is paramount, not just for the business, but for the families as well that live here in Burnley. And I don't think any money thrown at the problem will deal with the problem or solve it. That's not the answer. The answer is in capping prices, cutting the cost of living down so people can survive with what they've got, what they're used to. If people are using what they've got left to counteract the price rises, then they're not going to be left with anything at all to support the family further afield from electric, gas, food, and the main items that they need to live on.
Are you feeling inflation in the supply chain?
Yes.
As it were, you've got to buy plumbing equipment, you've got to buy copper pipes. Yeah. Copper prices have gone through the roof. Does that mean that in the for-profit part of what you do, I know you do a lot of non-profit work as well, are you having to push prices up in order to keep your business going?
We have seen a price rise from one of our suppliers of 2.5% this week.
Wow.
Next week we're going to get another 5% rise of the single people that we use.
We're talking about annual inflation of 5%. Yes. You're talking about weekly inflation of 5%.
Yeah. So we've now got to look at that and consider that the profits that we make for unpaid work that usually gets used for the not-for-profit work that's for free is now going to be reduced. So we're going to have less people to help, or we're not going to have as much money left because of that. That's why the government needs to look at capping prices.
Very interesting. Now, Carol, you're joined by Tully on your lap. What a picture the two of you make. You do own a local campsite and caravan centre, and you also oversee the Wood End Mining Museum. It strikes me that you might have benefited a little from lockdown. Of course, many people suffered and lost loved ones and so on, and we regret that. But this move towards staycations, did that help your business? People weren't getting on planes and flying to Spain or Portugal. They were staying here in sunny Lancashire and having a week in a caravan.
Yeah, it's true. At one point, I believe you couldn't buy a caravan. So many had been sold, nobody had any. It's certainly, during lockdown, we did lockdown, obviously, but then when we reopened, we were inundated with people wanting to come caravanning or camping or in one of the units. A lot of people came from very nearby, people who didn't know we even existed, and they'd bought a caravan, wanted to try it out, so they came to us because it was on the doorstep, and then they've just carried on coming back. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So do you think we may get more people holidaying here in the UK on a permanent basis because of what's happened during lockdown? Just like more of us will work from home than we thought previously.
I think we will. I think a lot of people have been converted and have started to see other areas, shall we say. I mean, it's not, when somebody says, would you take a caravan to Burnley, it's not sort of your first choice. But once they get here and they realise what there is in the area.
Great food, restaurants.
Absolutely, yeah.
John, what do you think of this levelling up agenda? You're a businessman, you've worked really hard with the rest of your family to keep this business on the road. You've chosen to locate this business in Burnley many years ago, taking a punt on buying this building and pouring your life's work into it. Do you think the Tories are really serious about levelling up? We've had a Tory MP here since 2019, the first in Burnley since 1910. What's your view on this government initiative?
I think they're serious about levelling up, but like most governments, I don't think they know how to do it, quite frankly. All their statements so far have been full of ambiguity, and I think sometimes deliberately so that we can't measure the beginning, we can't measure the end, and we can't measure the effect. Until you have measures that, a good example is Morecambe. Eden project, funded privately, of course, but you can measure the beginning, you can measure the end, 400 new jobs, nearly 1 million visitors a year. That's going to make an incredible difference to that area. Now, if you could do, and I'm not suggesting 20 Eden projects around England, but you've got to have, when you see projects like that, where you measure the effects of it, then I'm all for it. But when it's all ambiguous, we're going to raise the skills, and that sort of thing. Well, how, who? The good bit will be perhaps education for preschool ages. It's been shown pretty well now that that's important.
James, back in October, Burnley was awarded £20 million from the Towns Fund from central government. You're very much here on the ground among the community. Have you seen any sign of that? Do you believe in this pledge to level up?
I don't believe in the pledge to level up. The money that they have been promised, the 20 million, it's going to be used in the wrong areas. It's not going to benefit the people that need it. It's not going to remove poverty. If anything, it's going to just push people further into poverty. So I don't believe it at all, no, I don't.
We are going to come back to the panel after the break, so I'm going to ask you what you think about levelling up as well. Stay with us here on The Money from Burnley as part of GB News North West Week. We'll be back here at the wonderful Rose Hill House Hotel in Burnley in Lancashire after the weather. Stay with us. You're on The Money.
Hello again. There will be some bright spells, even some sunshine, mainly to the east of higher ground, but most places are cloudy today, and it will be damp in the northwest, western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, because a warm front is moving through. It's pushing northeast, and within this warm front, areas of cloud and rain arrive from the Atlantic, but also relatively mild air coming in from the west. Having said that, it is fairly chilly for the Northern Isles ahead of the warm front, and there'll be a few showers at first here before more persistent rain and drizzle arrives later, and it stays damp for western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, as well as northwest England and North Wales, particularly over higher ground. But there will be cloud breaks to the east of Wales, across southeast England and eastern England, and where we get some cloud breaks, 13 or even 14 Celsius is possible, so really quite mild for the time of year. and then this cloudy and damp zone spreads across the whole of the country overnight. So the cloud breaks tending to fill in somewhat, and because of the cloud and an increased breeze, well, it's going to be frost-free for everyone. Temperatures most places staying up at 7 or 8 Celsius. A mild start then to Thursday, but a dull and dreary start for many. Some persistent rain around western hills and coasts. But again, some cloud breaks will develop, especially for the Midlands, East Anglia and the South East, and feeling pleasant enough where that happens. But the breeze will pick up through the day. Gales in the north and west of Scotland, and some heavy rain arriving here later as temperatures drop away significantly behind this area of rain. This is a cold front, and it's going to spread its way southeastwards on Thursday night. Snow above 300 metres for Scotland as the cold front pushes through, and also for the Pennines, and some really quite lively winds associated with it, so gales around coasts and hills. Once that front clears through, colder air for Friday, mixture of sunny spells and showers, turning cloudy with rain in the north on Saturday.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan, on GB News Television and GB News DAB Radio. Now, we're broadcasting from Burnley in Lancashire, from the Rose Hill House Hotel, a former mill owner's house that's been converted into a wonderful 30-room venue and events location. A really good place to visit. This is GB News North West Week. Yesterday On the Money was presented from Macclesfield in Cheshire, a relatively prosperous market town just south of Manchester. From Macclesfield, we've moved to Burnley here today. On the Money, plus Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, will be presenting his briefing programme from here at 3 p.m. And then we pack up and we move up to Blackpool, the iconic seaside resort, also in Lancashire. Again, On the Money tomorrow, and Darren McCaffrey's briefing at 3 p.m. Plus Nigel Farage at 7 p.m. from Blackpool tomorrow evening. I'm still here in the Rosehill House Hotel with 3 Burnley locals. We're thinking about the government's Levelling Up white paper published this morning. We're expecting the Level Up Secretary Michael Gove to make a statement in the Commons at any moment. When that comes, we'll bring you that live. But let's go back to you, Carol Johnson. You're very proud to come from this area, and I wondered what you thought when Burnley elected a Tory MP in 2019 for the first time, as I said earlier, since 1910, on a pledge not only to get Brexit done, but also to level up, trying to tackle those big regional imbalances here in the UK. We are the most regionally imbalanced major economy in Europe and indeed the Western world. Do you take these pledges seriously? Has anything you've heard today from the politicians reassured you?
Not really. There's a lot of talk, but really need to see some action. They're very good at talking, but a little bit like this gentleman said, there's nothing really seems to come of it. You know, nothing that you can see, nothing tangible. Maybe there's work going on in the background that we're not aware of, but in the main, you don't seem to see much happening. I mean, the 20 million you talked about in Burnley.
From the Towns Fund in October was awarded to Burnley.
Yeah. I don't know where that went. I haven't seen anything. Nothing to say, oh, they're spending a lot of money in Burnley and it's going to be X, Y, Z. You just don't seem to see any of these things.
Now, I know you're really keen on local history. Indeed, you've set up and now you run a local mining museum.
Yeah.
We haven't seen coal mined here in Burnley since the early 70s. Tell us about that museum and why you think it's so important to keep the memory of that industrial heritage going, particularly in the minds of young people.
Well, in this area, it was King Cotton and Queen Coal. And, sorry, King Coal, Queen Cotton, getting it wrong way around now. Without the coal, there wouldn't have been the cotton industry. So it was a big part of people's lives.
And the looms were powered by steam engines. I've visited one here in Burnley. Really amazing.
So I think it's very important that this part of our past is kept alive, and we started the mining museum literally from pieces of rust we found on what was the colliery, which is now the caravan site, and it's grown. We have a fantastic collection. We just need people to come and see it, and it's getting it out there because unfortunately schools concentrate more on other forms of history, maybe the Romans, the Egyptians, whatever, when I feel they need to concentrate more on the local history and come and see what's beneath their feet, see what the grandfathers have done. The
industrial pioneering that happened moments from where we are now sitting, and indeed across the northwest, in many ways the cradle of the industrial revolution. James, as I said earlier, you're a proud Liverpudlian who chose to move to Burnley a while back now. What's your vision for a town like this? It is a town, as we've heard, with a really astonishing industrial heritage. It is a town which fell on hard times, but it is a town which in recent decades has shown real signs of entrepreneurial vigour and ability.
Burnley is a lovely place to live and the people are lovely here. People all get behind you, they stick up for each other, they're very family orientated. But if they've got a government that's not going to support them and give them what they need to enhance themselves and give the kids a better future, then it's not going to go any further than what it is. So the government, again, they need to really sit back and look at how they implement the changes in the country by giving the people the lives that they need to become better. If they're secluded and they're pushed down and not given what they need to enhance themselves and be better, they're not going to get any better.
Is it about infrastructure, housing, education? Which of those three?
It's all them three, and also give people a reason to get up and go to work so they can have enough capital and enough money left at the end of the week or the month where they can spend extra to support the children and support the future or buy something nice for themselves. Don't take every single penny off them by not capping the cost of living, because it's the cost of living that is destroying this country.
And John, your business is based not just on the events you run mainly at weekends, yourself and your daughter Emma, co-owners and co-managers of this facility. It's also the corporate trade you get during the week, isn't it? Business people travelling, particularly travelling to Burnley to tap into that regional aerospace hub. A really astonishing development here in Burnley. I think on some definitions this is the 5th biggest regional aerospace hub in the world. Are you seeing that corporate activity returning to Burnley now, or has everyone gone on to Zoom? And what else do you think Burnley can do to really generate that wealth that makes young people want to live and work here?
Yes, we've seen, since the last recession in 2008, we've seen corporate trade bounce back again, and particularly in the last couple of years. What we can do to keep that going, and what we need some of the more high-tech jobs here to keep the youngsters here. I mean, at the moment, they're going away to other big cities, and we need more of these jobs. We don't just need warehouses, we need proper jobs. But the council, the local entrepreneurs have been working very hard over the last 10 years to attract business. So they need help, they need support, but 20 million quid is nothing. I mean, it's to me, it's almost an insult. You know, towns like this, to really get things going, we need 100 million. It's not 20 million. Then that starts to see some feedback, but 20 million would just dissipate down the drain.
You need to attract private capital above all, right? Yes. Are you seeing, because this place is very well known in the town, a lot of business leaders from around the world who come to Burnley stay here. It's a destination of choice. Are you seeing, I mean, when you sit in here and you talk to your guests at the bar, I know you're very interested in business yourself, are you hearing good things about Burnley in terms of how the rest of the world looks at this place?
No. We've still got that downgraded image, I'm afraid. I mean, we can't even attract footballers to the local team, can we? So, I mean, but everybody's trying their best to get over that. We are trying to put forward a good image. We're trying to be optimistic, but we need more support than we're getting. At every recession, these northern towns get just left a little bit behind as we come out of the recession. And that's been going on for several recessions, and it's got to stop.
Briefly from all of you, this is your moment. You're in an elevator, you're in a lift with Michael Gove. What's your 10-second message, Carol, if you can, to Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary?
Well, just remember that the north exists. It doesn't finish just above London. You know, the north of the country exists.
Doesn't finish at Burnley, either.
No, it doesn't.
Lots
it just
of proud towns and cities.
Absolutely, it goes for everybody. We should all have equal opportunities, equal investment. You know, and it's a lovely country to live in, but it's very sectioned off, isn't it? Very.
James, your message to Michael Gove?
Stop doing your job out of a textbook.
Stop doing your job out of a textbook. No. Wise words. And lastly, you, John?
Can we start building our own trains, planes, tanks, missiles, and all the rest of it? Get it back here.
You've been a wonderful panel. We haven't heard from Michael Gove yet, but we've certainly heard from you. And I know a lot of our viewers and listeners will appreciate that. I certainly do. John Doherty, owner-manager of the Rose Hill House Hotel. James Anderson, local plumber extraordinaire. And, of course, Carol Johnson of the Smithman Farm Campsite and the Wood End Mining Museum. Thank you all for joining us here on GB News in Burnley for North West Week. Well, there you have it. Send us some emails, gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. What do you think of what you've heard? Is levelling up just a slogan, or is it a genuine attempt by this government to address our regional imbalances? Stay with us for more after the break and after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister has been described as a running joke on the international stage. The SNP's leader in Westminster, Ian Blackford, criticised Boris Johnson following fresh allegations that he attended a party in his flat in November 2020 during lockdown. He told the Commons if the Prime Minister is questioned by the police, he must resign. Meanwhile, Labour has accused Boris Johnson of introducing stealth taxes and gaslighting the British public. During Prime Minister's questions, Sir Keir Starmer compared the Prime Minister and the Chancellor Rishi Sunak to Thelma and Louise, saying they were driving the country off a financial cliff. The Prime Minister says the Tories have lifted the living wage and helped an extra 500,000 people off welfare and into work. The Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, is due to present the government's plans to level up the country, aiming to reduce the gap between poor and rich areas. Labour's criticised the policy, accusing the Tories of using recycled pots of money. Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood has been released on bail pending further investigation. The 20-year-old was first arrested on Sunday on suspicion of rape and assault of a young woman after social media images and videos were posted online. On Tuesday, he was further arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and threats to kill. The Home Secretary says there's been a failure of leadership in some parts of the Metropolitan Police. Priti Patel was speaking after the Independent Office for Police Conduct found evidence of bullying, racism and misogyny in the force. She told the Home Affairs Committee there are problems within the culture of the Met. You're now up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. A short break now, and then we'll be back to Liam and On the Money.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back, it's 1:36. You're with GB News here on television and DAB radio. I'm Liam Halligan, this is On the Money, and this is the latest instalment of GB News North West Week. We're in Burnley on the day the government's unveiled its Levelling Up white paper. A lot of Tory ministers are hoping that they can regain some of those red wall seats where Conservatives won, often in the first time for a generation across the Midlands and the north of England, securing Boris Johnson that 80-seat majority. We've been examining the Levelling Up white paper. We're expecting Secretary of State Michael Gove to stand up in the Commons at any moment. When he does, we'll bring you that live. Firstly, some emails from you. David says, although London salaries are around 30% higher than in northern areas, this does not mean Londoners are better off. The cost of living in the capital's so much higher, says David. From housing to a pint of beer, it's much, much more. Hillary emailed GBViews at GB News to say it's not government's fault that high streets aren't being used. Many people find it easier and less expensive to shop online. Turn empty department stores into flats. Michael says, with the Levelling Up Fund, are you going to build some decent social housing, please, that people can afford to live in? Certainly, we've built very few council houses in any part of the UK over recent years under successive governments. Sharon got in contact to say, how far north is Levelling Up going to reach? I'm from Durham. I live in Doncaster. There's no sign of levelling up in either areas. And what about the northern coastal areas? The north doesn't stop at Manchester. It needs to reach all the way to the Scottish borders. And I'm sure many of our Scottish viewers and listeners will think beyond the borders as well. Finally, Wendy contacted GBViews at gbnews.uk to say all power to GB News with its north-west spotlight this week. I thoroughly enjoyed your Northern Ireland week as well. This is exactly the strength of GB News, and kudos to your top-notch Northwest reporter, Bradley Harris. There you go, Brad. You can buy me a beer later for reaching that out. Now, I'm delighted to say that we're now joined from Burnley City Centre by Mick Fleming, known locally as Pastor Mick. I should declare an interest. I've met Pastor Mick before. We've talked, we've done interviews. He's a very important local character. He runs a charity called the Church on the Street, and he focuses his efforts in getting food to vulnerable families, people living on the street, people living in low income and otherwise vulnerable households. Mick, first off, thanks so much for joining me here on The Money.
Thanks, Liam. Good to see you again. So, yep, it's just all gone off. Everything's gone.
Mick, do you believe that... Oh, I'm afraid we've lost Pastor Mick there. We've lost our comms. Well, while we're trying to get rid of those gremlins here in Burnley, let's go back to our panel. John, let's come back to you, if I may. You've watched politics here very closely in the years that you've lived here. Do you think that there is a danger that this constituency could turn Labour again? What's your personal view, your political antenna telling you?
If the levelling up fails, it's Labour. They've got it in their hands. So Boris and co, if he's still there, has got a lot of work to do to certainly convince me, but an awful lot of Burnley people as well, that they mean it, and we're sick of the ambiguities. We want to see the real thing, you know, the hardware. What is it? How much is it going to cost? And when will it pay back?
And in your role as somebody who meets many local people, you run a major hotel in the locality, you meet many people, you know, buying and selling, tradesmen, chefs, all the rest of it. You employ lots of people here. You're very much a sort of local community leader. To what extent do you think that 2019 vote for the Tories here in Burnley, first time since 1910, was about getting Brexit done? And to what extent do you think it was about levelling up? Or was it a combination?
It was a combination. I mean, we were getting sick of talking about Brexit. We were insulted with David Cameron's efforts at Brexit and trying to convince us that he'd achieved something, and people just wanted it done. Theresa May was a little better, but it's far from Brexit. Boris made the promise that he would do it for, and to be fair, he did it. The levelling up is to come, and that's equally as important. So he's done one of the hard bits. The next bit is the real hard one.
James, much of the political media class has, of course, understandably, some people would say, been focused on Downing Street lockdown parties, birthday cakes and all the rest of it. Meanwhile, we've got a cost of living crisis, which you've rightly referred to 3 or 4 times on this panel. It's something we bang on about at On The Money and across GB News more generally. What's your mood in terms of the politics here since that December 2019 election?
When it comes to Brexit, Boris done a good job. He got us out of Europe. He promises that I'll give him that. And then we went into a pandemic. We all went into it blind. He done the best he possibly could. But since the pandemic started and now, there's that many catastrophic mistakes that he's made and the Conservative Party have made, that I think now it's time that they just step back, let somebody else go in, do the job, get us through what we're going through now, end the pandemic, get the levelling up done correctly, and let everybody in this country have a fair whack of the whip.
Do you want the media to keep talking about Downing Street birthday parties, lockdown parties? What do you think when you see reporters, when Boris Johnson stands up in Ukraine with the Ukrainian leader, and the first question that the British press asks him is about Downing Street lockdown parties?
While Boris Johnson was having parties and there's millions were having parties, I said goodbye to my dad. My dad died. I couldn't, in fact, I couldn't say goodbye. I never saw him when he died. So my thoughts on that are very high. Boris is a disgrace for doing that and allowing it to happen. He should step down for that reason, and that reason alone, not because of any other failure, just because of them reasons.
Do you agree with that, Carol? Do you think the media should keep pressing this question? Some people think that the media class is trying to hound out of office a democratically elected Prime Minister. But in the end, we're all answerable to the public. What do you think?
I think he was totally wrong. I think he should admit his involvement in it, and I agree with this gentleman here that until he does that, I think they're going to keep it going. But to be honest, everybody's sick of hearing about these parties.
Yeah.
Everybody's aware of people that they've lost. I mean, my mum's in a care home. I wasn't able to see her for months, and you feel very bitter. My friend's father-in-law died. They weren't allowed to see him. All the funeral directors were all dressed up in all this gear that they'd to have. They weren't. It was a horrendous time for a lot of people. And he's having parties? No. But I think it's time to put that behind us.
So you would, on balance, give him the benefit of the doubt and move on now, or would you want to see him step down a Tory leadership election? And then probably another general election.
Yeah, I don't give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure he was as guilty.
Marked his card.
Yeah, but it's who takes his place, who's going to step into his shoes and do anything better. I'm not sure that there is such a person.
Now, all three of you are heavily invested in Burnley. You've all moved to Burnley, by the way, even though you're now proud locals. You've all chosen this Lancashire former mill town. What's your vision, John, of what Burnley could be? You've obviously, you believe in this town, and that's why you've built this hotel with your bare hands, you and your daughter Emma and the rest of your family. What could Burnley be with the right combination of public and private investment?
It could be a high-tech town. It would be one of those wonders where you've gone from the steam age to high-tech. It could be one of those towns that have achieved that. But it needs help. And it's not just Burnley, there's Blackburn, all the other towns around us. It's one industrial hub that demands and it deserves support from the government. And it needs one project, I mean, dare I say, fracking, to change the whole area. We're going to be using gas for 20, 25 years, whether we like it or not.
So exploit the local oil and gas deposits.
Can we, for God's sake, exploit them?
Yeah.
And that would transform not just Burnley, that would transform Lancashire.
You're in and out of many people's houses, James, because you're a plumber and it's what you do. How often does transport come up as an issue? Local bus networks, local train networks. A lot of people talk about HS2, which of course passes by Burnley. It doesn't come to Burnley, as it goes not just from London to Birmingham, but also from Birmingham to Crewe and then on to Manchester. Not to Bradford and Leeds, that bit has been shelved. But how important to people that you know and the local economy, in your view, are those local bus routes and local train services?
They're not adequate enough. They do need more. They need to get HS2 closer to Burnley, or the link off HS2 into Burnley. Burnley is the centre of the northwest, in my opinion. That's the reason I'm here. That's why I stayed here, and it's got a lot of potential. Burnley could be the next capital city of the United Kingdom if it wanted to be. If the investment was here, it could be. If it had the investment, it could be, because the people here have got the drive and the passion to make this the best place.
There's generations of entrepreneurial,
lovely people,
innovative, technologically path-breaking people.
The community is unbelievable.
It's not an accident that so much of industrial history has happened here that's been noticed and mimicked around the world. What do you think Burnley could be, again, with the right combination of infrastructure, public and private investment, Carol?
I think it could be a lot better than it is. I think if people sort of really looked at the town and see what it's got to offer, the town itself, the surrounding areas, and invested in it, then I think, we could. There's a long way to go. We can do it. But people, well, particularly the government, they just seem to pass you by and pat you on the head and say, well, perhaps in time. But we need the investment here.
What do young people in Burnley do, in the sense that, what share of them do you think stay and make a life here, and what share of them leave? To what extent is there a feeling that if you're going to be successful, you've got to go down south?
I don't know necessarily about going down south, but I do know a lot of young people who want to go to the cities, to Manchester, more than anywhere, to be fair. They see that there's much more freedom in the city to do what they want to do, to get on the housing ladder, this sort of thing, than there is around here. Because as was said earlier, there's no affordable housing really in the area for young people, and I think that is a big problem. I think a lot of them are continuing to go towards the cities.
James, you do a lot of work with vulnerable households in the charitable, the not-for-profit part of the business that you're involved with. So we were going to talk to Mick Fleming about that aspect of Burnley. We're still trying to get communications with him. He's in central Burnley. But let me ask you, to what extent is there still deprivation in Burnley? To what extent did lockdown make that deprivation worse, and what can we do about it?
Lockdown made a lot of people go into furlough, a lot of people cut back on what they had. They had a lot less then, because a lot of people lost their jobs as well. And we had to bridge the gap, like myself, the likes of Pastor Mick Fleming, his charity and other charities. We've all jumped in and we've all secured and supported the community as a whole, as in families, elderly, vulnerable, disabled people. We need to continue that, but the government also needs to support us to support them, so we can give the future that everybody deserves and the life everybody deserves. But there's a lot of it out there and it needs to be dealt with. You can't just ignore it, brush it under the carpet and think it'll go away, or expect the charities in the country to deal with that, because that's not going to happen.
How confident are you, John, that our political leaders down in Westminster really understand these northern constituencies?
I don't think there's enough of them that do. They've not been here. A lot of them haven't even had proper jobs, let's face it. Yeah. And I think you've got to go back. A lot of people have done research on places like this, and deprivation breeds deprivation, I'm afraid. And if you don't tackle it when the kids are young, they're deprived for life.
Well, we are talking about what the public, particularly in the north of England, thinks about the levelling up agenda, thinks about government statements on addressing the UK's regional imbalances. Let's have a look again at some voices from Macclesfield collected by GB News North West reporter Bradley Harris.
I think the secret is that Macclesfield's quite an entrepreneurial town. We've got a lot of people who create things. We've got a lot of people who are very, creative-minded. And most people who live in Macclesfield have a love for their own town. So if an independent operator opens, they will have their own friends that come in, they will have their own following, and that will remain. And the way that the independent operators work together in the town is just amazing. There's a real kind of camaraderie between the operators, and they seem to bounce off each other. I don't think anybody has anything against the chain offerings, but it just seems to work, and we're really, really lucky as a town that we've got people that live here and operate here. The North West and the North in general has a rich history of market towns, and this particular market has been running for nearly 12 years now. We've run the market for 6 months. Within that 6 months, post-pandemic, if you like, not that we're out of the pandemic, but beyond the kind of lockdown and restrictions that we were experiencing, we've been allowed to grow the market, make it much bigger, and bring a lot more variety into the town.
Certainly Macclesfield is a huge melting pot of lots of different things. There's a lot of foodie types here, hence we've got an amazing street food down on Castle Street over there. A lot of musicians also, hence we have an amazing live music line-up every month. And we just have a huge variety in terms of stalls. We've got taxidermy to books to kids' clothing to food, drinks, and everything in between, really.
Part of the ethos of Treacle Market is that we are a symbiotic being within the town, so that people who are independent traders, the larger traders, all benefit from what takes place on Treacle Sunday. We have some of the independent traders that have shops in the town trading on some of the market stalls just to raise their profile. We have a lot of outdoor visitors into the town, and what we want to do is make Macclesfield more of a go-to destination. And that's part of the kind of master plan for Treacle Market, is for Treacle to be completely connected across the board with the whole of the town in order to drive footfall and create this amazing place that Macclesfield already is, but people don't seem to be aware of it.
Public support's been incredible, as you can see from the footfall we've got here. Traders as well have massively supported us. They've embraced Andy and I as new market managers as well, and perhaps been a bit patient as we learnt the ropes. Certainly as well, Macclesfield Town Council have been incredible. We couldn't do any of this without their support. Things like the legal side of it, road closures, that type of thing, they do for us. And Cheshire East are the people who actually we get the stalls from. So without them as well, we hire the stalls from them, but without their support we couldn't do it either.
Town centres as a rule are being forced to switch to a much more hospitality-focused offering. Online shopping's had a big effect out of town shopping parks. But I do believe that residential and hospitality and experiential offerings across town centres are the future, and I think it's not such a bad thing. In general, markets will continue and grow, but yeah, bars, restaurants, places to go and do things are the way town centres are going to turn.
Some voices there from Macclesfield's Treacle Market in Cheshire, part of GB News North West Week. Those interviews conducted by GB News North West correspondent Bradley Harris. I'm here at the Rosehill House Hotel in Burnley in Lancashire. Final word from each of my panel. Carol Johnson, your final message to the Prime Minister if he's got a chance of winning Burnley back at the next election.
He needs to remember that the North exists. He needs to invest in the North. If he invests in the North, the people will probably follow him.
James Anderson?
Keep it real and keep the people's support real.
John Doherty?
Everything I buy, my underpants, lateral flow test, look on the back, it's made in China. Can we fix that?
John Doherty, co-owner and co-manager of the Rosehill House Hotel. James Anderson, local plumber, thanks so much to you. And of course, Carol Johnson of the Smithson Farm Camping Centre and the Wood End Mining Museum. Thank you for being such a fantastic panel with me here today. This is GB News North West Week. Yesterday we were in Macclesfield. Today we're in Burnley. Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, will be up at 3 p.m. with his briefing. Tomorrow we'll be in Blackpool again on the money at 1. Darren McCaffrey with his briefing at 3. Nigel Farage from Blackpool at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Thanks for all your emails. Thank you so much for joining me today here in Burnley. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello again. There will be some bright spells, even some sunshine, mainly to the east of higher ground, but most places are cloudy today, and it will be damp in the northwest, western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. Because a warm front is moving through, it's pushing northeast, and within this warm front, areas of cloud and rain arrive from the Atlantic, but also relatively mild air coming in from the west. Having said that, it is fairly chilly for the Northern Isles ahead of the warm front, and there'll be a few showers at first here before more persistent rain and drizzle arrives later, and it stays damp for western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, as well as northwest England and North Wales, particularly over higher ground. But there will be cloud breaks to the east of Wales, across southeast England and eastern England, and where we get some cloud breaks, 13 or even 14 Celsius is possible, so really quite mild for the time of year. And then this cloudy and damp zone spreads across the whole of the country overnight. So the cloud breaks